The light meter is the thing that tells you if there's too much light or too little bit of light. And learning to read your meter is very simple, very easy to do. We're going to go over that right now. But we're also going to go over when to trust your meter and when to trust your brains. So, you know, you got your brains, use them, baby, use them. But your meter, very simple. Here it goes. It looks like this. I'm gonna put a little graphic in here, but it looks like something like this. You have the center, which is your perfect exposure, and you have little bars that go this way, which are saying this is a third underexposed, 2/3 underexposed, a full stop underexposed, and so on. This is saying it's overexposed on this side. Overexposed means there's too much light. There's the amount of light that you need, and this is over. So it's overexposed means too much light. Underexposed means too little bit of light. You know, you're under what you want. There's not enough. There's not enough light. In those situations, you're going to want to bring that little meter right back into the center where it says this is the proper exposure. That's what your camera feels is the proper exposure. And a lot of times it's right. A lot of times it's, you know, pretty right on the button. You know, it's pretty spot on. Now, to get that little line to move, if it's overexposed, you're going to want to cut down the amount of light that's coming in. So you shut down your aperture to cut down, there's less light coming in, or you speed up how long the little shutter stays open so that less light is coming in. So then you'll see it move, and each line is a click, whether it be a click of your aperture or a click of your shutter speed. You'll see that it moves one time for each one. 3 moves is a full stop because it moves in thirds of stops. So using your meter, you can easily gauge if your picture is going to be exposed correctly, or at least to your camera's, you know, idea of correctly. There are times when you're going to have to use your meter as a gauge for your brain, so your brain can then gauge where to go from there, which is what I do a lot of the time. Is, you know, you gauge the picture through your meter, and then you know that you tell your camera it's overexposed, but really the picture is exposed correctly. One situation is a bride. If you're looking at a bride and the camera says, okay, this is a correct exposure of that bride. If you shoot it, chances are it's going to be dark because there's so much white in the picture. The camera's reading that as it's telling you there's a lot of light in the picture. So with a bride, you would overexpose, or if there's a lot of white in the picture, you overexpose to compensate for the camera seeing that what it believes to be an adequate amount of light. It's really just a lot of white. So it thinks there's an adequate amount of light, but you have to say, okay, I know that I need to have this be overexposed. Really, you're doing a correct exposure, but as far as your meter is concerned, it's overexposed. So you'll see that little thing go click, 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 and you want to do it about you know, a 2/3 of a stop to a stop, or whatever you feel suits you best. Using your meter on your camera is a big part of being able to take pictures. Basically, there are 4 types of metering modes: the evaluative mode, evaluative meter mode, partial metering, spot metering, and center weighted average metering. So the evaluative mode, what it does is it takes the whole entire picture and it does a reading of the light from everywhere, and then it decides what's the best light. It just sees everything and says, hey, this is the correct lighting for this subject. Your camera is, you know, supposed to be smart and know what's the subject and what's the background and stuff like that. But I don't really use evaluative too much. I just haven't had very much success using it. I prefer the spot metering. But before that, we're going to talk about the partial metering, which is a lot like spot and would probably be good too. I just got stuck on spot metering. It's what I use. The partial metering does like about 8% of your picture, so about something in the range of about right here. So it's about 8% of your picture. It meters just that and says this is exposed correctly, this middle 8%. And so that's the partial metering. Spot metering just goes one step further, and it goes to the 3.5%. So it's like this little 3.5 area right here, this 3.5% of the picture. This is the only thing that the light is metering the light of this section. So this is the only section that it's metering the light for, is the 3.2%. And don't, you know, it's not exactly this perfect, so, you know, but it's going to meter just that. And the reason that I like to use that is because I put that right on my subject, and I let the camera meter it, and I see what the camera thinks of that individual thing. I'm normally looking at my subject, and I'll put my subject right in the middle before I frame to get the focus anyways. You know, I put the subject right in the middle, get my focus, and then I reset it so I'll get my meter reading also right when I do that. So my meter reading happens to come from that 3.5% that's right in the center, and it's a spot. It's very specific, and so I know that that thing right there is going to be what the camera says is exposed correctly. And then if I need to compensate or do anything from there, then I know that I'm thinking about exactly what I was looking at. So it's not, you know, a reading of all this. You know, like right now, my background is brighter than I am. And so if the camera was going to do a reading and it said, you know, okay, well, this is the proper exposure, it might have me underexposed and my background properly exposed or somewhere in the middle. But, you know, I would prefer me be perfectly exposed and my background could be blown out. You know, that's the look I'm looking for, you know. So that's why I use spot metering. The other metering mode that the camera has, which I don't use too much, but I think I'm going to start. I checked it out, you know, and what it is, it's center weighted average metering. And what it does is it weights the center, it meters the center, and then it does everything else. It meters everything else, and then it gives you an average, but with more emphasis on what's in the center to be exposed. So I still like spot metering. That's the one that I choose. That's the one I'll probably continue to use a lot. But the other one seems like it has some, you know, some interesting possibilities. So you know, it's all about experimenting, find out what works best for you, and then you know, you go from there and you learn, you live, you learn. You know. Another thing, especially, you know, with the digital cameras of nowadays, take a picture and look at the back, which is what everyone does. But don't just look at the picture on the back, because depending on the lighting situation that you're in, you could be seeing it as a good picture. One example is this: you can change the brightness of the display on the back of your camera. That's not changing the brightness of your picture, it's changing the brightness of your display. So if you have it all the way up and it's super bright, you could think you have a correct exposure, but then when you really look at it on a computer, you're going to have an underexposed image because you're just seeing the bright side of your camera. Or if you dim it down, you're not dimming down the camera's the picture's information at all. You're dimming down your display. So you don't want to really count on your display as it is to see the picture. What you want to use, here it comes, the histogram. You want to use the histogram on your camera. And you have to look in your manual to find out how to get your histogram to show. But normally it's just there's an info button. If you click info 1 or 2 times, you'll see a histogram come up. There'll be, your picture will get small, and next to it will be what's called a histogram. The histogram is a graph, and it's got an up and a side. I'm not a graph man, but it looks like a mountain range that goes on, and it's telling you the brightness levels within your picture. It goes from 0 to 255, 255 being white, 0 being black. And it's telling you in between the whites and blacks, how prominent are the shades that are in between those whites and blacks. And you want your picture to be, you want all your grades of brightness to be between those. If the little mountain range comes off the edge and it just stops on your white side, it means your picture's overexposed. If it goes on this side and your picture, the mountain range hits up on this side and it disappears at the line, it means you're underexposed. It means all the blacks that are beyond 0 that would go on this side are being clipped out of your picture. There's going to be no detail on anything that's dark beyond that point. Same thing with the white. If your white goes up and out here, that means all the whites that are brighter than 0, all the whites that are beyond 0 are going to be completely white in your picture. There's going to be no detail in your whites. You want your whites and blacks, everything to fall between the 0 and 255, and that's where it means everything's going to have detail. There are some situations where, you know, your whites could fall off, you don't mind, such as bright reflections, or if you have a light source in your picture, that light source most likely is going to be, it's going to appear as something that goes off the edge. That's fine, as long as your subjects fall in between. And you'll get to understand that. You'll get to understand how to read your histogram by doing it. So the more you practice reading your histogram, the more you practice using your light meter along with your histogram, along with your brain, you'll get properly exposed pictures. You'll get them. They'll be there, and you'll be blown away by how easy it is to do, how easy it is to adjust your brains to that, to using your histogram, using your meter, and you'll catch on. If you've never used a histogram in your camera, now's the time to do it. All right, you'll see that it really can affect your picture to just know how to use it. Your brain will start working with your camera, and you'll start getting the pictures that you'll start getting the exposure that you need in order to really show what you want to show in your pictures. Learn it. Like I said, 0 is the blacks, 255 is the whites. Keep everything in between, everything will be clean and it'll be exactly what you need to get, you know, the pictures that you want. So, you know, do that. Take care. Have fun.